The International Cocoa Verification Board, the ICVB, is a 9-person strong group, a multi-stakeholder group, that represents different constituencies that are interested in child labour matters in origin countries for cocoa growing. When I was first approached for this, the fact that this multi-stakeholder group was set together in such an open and participatory way by consultation with the different stakeholders and constituencies that have an interest in this was a key element in my deciding to accept the position. The fact that there are 5 civil society seats, 2 government seats and 2 industry seats means that in no way neither industry nor government can take an overpowering view in any of the debates. We're really there to inform the process and offer expertise and listen to other concerns. Verification is a very important step in terms of assessing that the way the certification, so the surveys, data collection, has been properly addressed, not only in terms of process, but also in terms of the type of data that has been collected. The certification exercise, and there's sometimes a bit of confusion that stems from the terminology used, is really an in-depth survey of on-the-ground conditions in terms of labour. The way the surveys were carried out were largely by the governments of the 2 countries, being Ivory Coast and Ghana. This was uncharted territory. To my knowledge, nothing has ever been done of this scope and this type of activity in terms of assessing reality on the ground in rural communities. The type of data that's looked at and collected are, for instance, the type of activities in which different community operators engage, including children, but also including adults. What time they engage in these operations. Is it on a regular basis or at certain times, for instance, during major harvests? It's also an assessment of the ages, which is a very difficult thing to assess in some of these rural communities where there isn't necessarily a census of population. So it's a lot of both complex and simple factors that are built into the different questionnaires. There were pilot surveys in both countries, and now these have been scaled up to represent over 50% of the cocoa growing communities. Both governments have already given the full certification results to the independent verifiers. They've received the whole set of data. They are equipped and they have the ability to go through that data and from there on to set up the subsample survey, which is going to effectively test on the ground both the interview techniques and the accuracy of the data that has already been collected. And they have not only the child interview technique experience, but also very strong on-the-ground links with organizations that work with the communities. And this is absolutely key, especially if you're talking about cocoa growing areas. These are rural communities, they're difficult to access. These people that were interviewed do not see a lot of strangers coming to see them, so it's very important to have a very strong local presence and understanding of the issues they face. A community is a very complex structure in itself. You have different groupings within the community, and each group is addressed in a different way. You'll have the seniors, you have the children, you have the women, and all the tools and techniques are adapted according to these different groups. They're tailor-made, but they're always built on the principle that you have to be able to cover complex subjects, but in a very simple and easy to understand way. For instance, role play with children, or participatory or symbolic approaches to different activities they take part in, to help them inform the process as well and be able to speak freely. For the role play was actually to get children to get together and set up a little play without giving too many extra instructions, just saying, okay, you're a family involved in cocoa growing and play out a scene from everyday life. And it's actually interesting because the children will role play all the different actors, so the mother, the father, the children, everybody, and how they portray the different activities they engage in, the ones which they enjoy, the ones which they resent, and also very interesting how they see themselves in the future, whether they want to stay in cocoa growing, whether they have a voice in what happens to them later. All this comes out in a very striking way in that role play. In one of the villages I visited, women were asked to draw an adult and a child, one next to each other. And it was actually quite interesting to see the fact that there was very little difference in the size that was attributed to both, which in a way is maybe representative of the fact that what we would probably consider still to be a child in our parts of the world, or certainly back in Europe, in some instances, older children are considered to be almost adults already in these communities. And by explaining in what way, for instance, they should not be made to carry heavy weights, etc., and if you ask these ladies to redraw a child, suddenly they'll put it back into proportion. A lot of the people engaged in cocoa growing are illiterate. There's a very high illiteracy rate. And getting the messages across takes a very long time. So I guess the time it takes is one of the most frustrating obstacles or challenges. Mm-hmm. I strongly believe that the way this is being approached now, and with solid buy-in from all the different stakeholders involved, we can really affect change that's sustainable. As I said before, you can't have a thriving cocoa industry if you don't have thriving cocoa communities. And I find extremely encouraging to see that the governments are taking part, as I said, in this activity and engaging. So personally, to see how all these different people are getting together and really working together in mutual respect to affect change is very heartening.